Great. All right, good evening. Thank you for joining us this evening for the Town of Frederick Board of Trustees meeting. I think we have everything we need. You all have everything you need to get started? Yes? Great. Would you please take the roll, Jason?
Trustee Mahan.
Here.
Trustee Tavaldi.
Here.
Trustee March.
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Brown.
Here.
Trustee Lamach.
Here.
Mayor Kreitz.
Here.
Trustee Padilla.
Here.
Mayor, you have enough for quorum tonight.
Thank you. If everyone would please stand and remove your caps for the Pledge of Allegiance, I'd appreciate it, please.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. All right, do we have any changes to our agenda this evening?
No changes, Mayor.
That's great, thank you. And no special presentations, correct?
Correct.
Okay, thank you. We'll move swiftly into our public comment. This portion of our agenda is provided to allow members of our audience to provide comments to the Board of Trustees. Please sign in and I will call you. If your comments or concerns require an action, that item or items will need to be placed on a later agenda. I will mention, I'm not sure, I don't have the sign-up sheet yet, but we do have 2 public hearings tonight in our action agenda. One for Ordinance 1400 and then one for our proposed 2025 budget. If you would like to speak on those items, I'll give you another opportunity to speak as public during those items as well. So you're welcome to speak now or you're welcome to speak during those items. Either one of those are up to you. Give it a moment just in case. Hi.
Hi.
Thank you. Thanks. Appreciate it. All right, Steve, would you like to speak now?
Sorry?
Steve, would you like to speak now? Yeah. Okay, sure. It's up to you. Do you want to speak now or do you want to speak during the public hearing?
At the ordinance hearing.
Okay, so that's okay. It's all right. Okay, and let's see. Oh, goodness sakes. I'm sorry that I may not say this correctly. Would you help me with this?
Thank you, sir.
Looks like Merle.
Thank you.
Merle, is that correct? Merle, hi. Would you like to speak during the public comment or do you want to speak or during the public hearing?
I had a comment to make about the parks.
Okay, please join us. Yes, just join us at the,
Question,
okay.
is it necessary to lock up the restrooms from November to March in the parks? It really makes an inconvenience for the people that use them. I realize there's porta potties out there, but they're really poorly maintained.
It's a great question.
That covers it.
Okay, that's a great question. I don't see Kobe in attendance at the moment, but we do have your contact information so we can get back to you. I am not sure if it's necessary or the reasons behind why we lock the restrooms from November to March, but we'll get back to you, okay? Okay, thank you. Anyone else for public comment? Okay. All right, we have staff reports. Brian, would you kick us off, please?
Yes, Mayor and members of the board. A couple items I just want to bring up to you tonight. We do have the Business Awards celebration tomorrow morning. The program starts at 8 o'clock. If you can be there, just shoot me a text either tonight or tomorrow and we can figure out how to arrange or make sure that you're plugged into the program. If you can't, no worries. We will have team members there to accommodate that. This is our second annual. It was a huge deal last year. We have a really great mic or masters of ceremonies that will be doing the program. So it's a great event and it's a great opportunity to recognize our Frederick businesses. I wanted to just mention the great work that the Parks team has done recently with the plaque for a former trustee, Trustee Haddle. I know they had a ceremony on Sunday a couple weeks ago, and it's grateful to the team for the thought and sincerity in creating that and doing that for that family. Another item that the team, just keeping your eyes on, decking the downtown. This kind of plays into our all-employee meeting that we had last week. sent some information out in regards to that, but we're issuing a challenge to the organization of how we can elevate downtown. And we're open to ideas and ways we can incentivize and generate ideas for all employees to be part of the wonderful strategic vision that the board has for the Frederick downtown area. And just a final note, we are in process with the people and culture director position. We did do some initial interviews last week. We've taken a little bit of a different approach with a targeted headhunting, just reaching out to people that we know or people that we know in the industry that are known quantities and going that route first. And so we're going to continually move in that process and hope to have somebody here fairly soon and get that critical piece of our organization filled. So
Great.
We are working tirelessly on that, and then we will also probably have information by beginning of December in terms of the next steps with the engineering vacancy. With that, is there any questions that I can answer?
Questions? Do you all have the proposed agenda items for the remaining meetings for 2024? Do you all have that? No?
For this meeting?
I think we have one meeting in December.
We do, and what we can do, Mayor, is we will send out information on how to access it. It's in Civic Plus. We are in the process of planning through the first half of next year, and we should have that by mid-December, so you can see all the way up to June. But we will send out information so you can access that. We don't have a whole lot other than we have we actually have a number of items on the action agenda item for December 10th. We'll provide that this week to you.
Thank you. I think that's what I'm most concerned about is the amount of items that we have for discussion that night seems, from my perspective, like a lot. And so if there are any of those items that can be pushed, maybe you all have that conversation of priority. I would appreciate it. Any other questions for Brian? No? Great. Thank you for the updates. Okay, we'll move into our consent agenda. Goodness sakes. Our consent agenda items are considered to be routine and will be enacted by one motion and vote. There will be no separate discussion of consent agenda items unless a board member so requests, in which case that item or items will be removed from the consent agenda and considered at the end of the consent agenda. You have 3 items for consideration. Does anyone wish to remove any items for discussion, or is there some direction you'd like to provide at this time?
Go ahead.
I didn't know if you had something you wanted to move.
Nope.
Okay. Madam Mayor, I move that we approve the consent agenda as presented.
I second.
Motion and a second. Thank you.
Trustee Padilla?
Yes.
Trustee Lamont?
Yes.
Trustee Mahan?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Brown?
Yes.
Trustee March?
Yes.
Trustee Tavelli?
Yes.
Motion passes 6-0.
Thank you. Okay, so tonight we have action agenda items. This is item H. It is a public hearing. So at this time, I would like to open the public hearing and invite Allie and Matt to review this item with us. This is for a continuation of our October 22nd Board of Trustees meeting. It was tabled to this day. This is ordinance number 1400 for land use code amendments to Article 9 regarding oil and gas drilling and production, and rescinds ordinance 1392, which created a temporary moratorium for oil and gas development. So all matters now that are part of discussion and presentation from our staff, comments from the community, and questions from the board will all be considered part of this public hearing. I also mentioned in the October 22nd meeting that any comments that we received prior to this tabling would also be part of the public hearing and in part of the record as well. Just wanted to clarify.
Okay, thank you, Mayor. Good evening to you all again. As the Mayor has stated, this is a continued item, the Land Use Code amendments to Article 9 regarding oil and gas production. Staff already presented the information for this item, so I'll quickly go through the highlights. This item aligns with the strategic plan goals of community and economic vitality and safe and secure. Previously, the Planning Commission met on October 3rd. The Planning Commission heard the Natural Medicine Healing Center and Oil and Gas Production Land Use Code amendments as one item. The Commission voted 3-2 to approve both of those items. All of the conditions of approval that were placed on the approval that evening were related to the Natural Medicine Healing Center portion. The Board of Trustees met on October 22nd, as you stated. Staff did do our presentation. We did open the public hearing and heard from the public, and you voted to continue the item to this evening. Since that time, the Board of Trustees did hold a work session on October 29th to discuss some and address some concerns raised at the public hearing. Matt's going to talk a little bit about some changes that have been made since that last meeting.
Trustees, good to see you. Matt Sura, Special Counsel to the Town of Frederick. So the changes that were made to the code include the plugging and abandonment report. Occidental, which I'm going to refer to as Oxy, requested more specifics on what information is required by the town. And we made some changes to clarify that we are requiring an ECMC well abandonment report. On the next item, alternative compliance buffer, Life Fellowship Church requested more clarity on the subject. And we made a change that wells plugged within the last 5 years that are fully improved by the ECMC would be able to receive the 50 by 100 foot setback. And that's in section 918. There were some specific comments on the code made by Frederick Firestone Fire Protection District, and their comments were included in section 9.9. One of the things that they wanted is to see a tactical response plan, and that is a card. It's a laminated 8.5 by 11 card that is used in the event of emergency. It's kind of a really quick review of what happens at that specific well pad in the event of emergency. The American Petroleum Institute, I'll call API, mentioned that future updates to the standards document should be through resolution or ordinance to have legal effect, and so we made that change, agreeing with them. API requested that pipeline GIS coordinates should not be held by the town. In fact, you have the right to GIS coordinates for all the pipelines within your town, whether it be a transmission line, any pipeline. They come from a flow line that is from the wellhead to the facilities, and then there's a midstream line that picks it up from there, and then there are transmission lines that go beyond there. And you have a right to all that information, and that information is actually housed by ECMC and the Public Utilities Commission. Both have rules on the books that allow for you to ask for that information. So long as it's held confidential, you can receive that information. So we don't really need to have that in there, so we removed it, knowing that we can get it from the state agency. On the subject of expiration of permits, API mischaracterizes our proposed requirements. This is actually a 3-year permit, and we allow it for an extension for 4 years, and all they have to show is due cause, that they can't get it done in the time. However, we do allow for the requirement by the town manager, to require a 2-year permit, and that's in the event that there's going to be conflict with new development and the oil and gas development. We can't have people moving into their new homes only to have new oil and gas development happening right across the street. So changing to, so I went through that. Sorry, I'm not advancing my slides. The next one, we're going into the standards document. There's an electric equipment requirement. United Power requested clarity on the section, and we felt that their language accomplished exactly what we had set out to do, and so we adapted their language, adopted it. Water reporting, Oxy requested to not duplicate water reporting already required by the state, and so we made a change to section D9 to eliminate duplicative reporting. Use of temporary tanks. Oxy requested that temporary tanks be allowed on site for the first year of production, and those are mostly due for upset conditions. And that is a right use for those tanks, and so we're going to allow that for the first year of production. It does not. However, because they can't use them for production, they have to be temporary. We're requiring contacts for 2 people available 24/7 in the event of emergency or complaint. And Oxy requested the inclusion of an integrated operations center that could provide 24/7 contacts for complainants, and we made that change. Again, they're at the scale where they're doing this for half of the country, and they have a fully staffed complaint center that does that for all of their operations, state by state. The analysis of a plugged-in decommissioned well. API reminds the town that it has the authority over surface locations and cannot require the plugging and abandoning of a well, and so we've changed required to request wells to be plugged. And that is in the event where there's new oil and gas horizontal development that is happening underneath wells that are into the same formation. They have 2 choices. They can plug and abandon those wells, or they can kind of temporarily abandon them so there's not hydraulic fracking fluid that is using that as an escape valve. It really is much safer and frankly better for the operator and for public health and safety to have those wells that are completed into the same formation that is being accessed by the horizontally developed wells to be plugged and abandoned. And so we will be asking for that in the event that that happens. And then there was a number of requested changes to the standards document that we did not adopt, and I just want to give you a brief reason why. On air quality monitoring plans, API asked for the air quality monitoring plans to comply with the Air Quality Control Commission's Reg 7, and that is already required. Gas leak detection and repair. The proposed requirements are in line with Air Quality Control Commission Reg 7, but simply requires faster repair of found leaks. Air Quality Control Commission requires 5 working days, business days, and we're requiring 3 days, regardless of whether they're working days. That just is, it makes sense when you've got a high density of people within a town to make sure that they get to those repairs more quickly. API takes exception to Frederick requiring the use of electricity for their production equipment. We've already discussed this. Electricity is available throughout Frederick, and this is a necessary and reasonable requirement. Like any other industry that you're going to welcome into your town, you would expect that they're not going to have a generator to generate their own electricity. We'll expect the same from the oil and gas industry. Pipeline infrastructure. API questions the need for a pipeline takeaway for oil, and this is one of the more important issues in that you want to make sure that that you don't have a lot of truck traffic on your streets, and that's the end of my presentation.
This project was properly noticed according to our Frederick Land Use Code requirements. Just a reminder, we did email our 3 largest producers asking them for commentary on the original ordinance, plus industry trade groups and outside referral agencies. And like Matt said, we've incorporated plenty of the comments we got back from them. We also received roughly 20 public comment letters after your original packet was published. All of those comment letters have been entered into the public record. Staff also received additional correspondence from Life Fellowship Church. Those are that's what I put on your desk this evening. We'd like those to also be entered into the record. Just a reminder on the review criteria, just one of the review criteria needs to be met in order to approve a land use code amendment. Staff does believe that all 4 of the review criteria are being met with these proposed code amendments. And staff is recommending approval of Ordinance 1400, which adopts the Land Use Code Amendment package as finalized by the town attorney, and rescinds Ordinance number 1392, which created the temporary moratorium for oil and gas development. We would be happy to answer any questions for you. Thank you.
Questions for staff, and then we'll open it up to public comments. Do you have any questions for staff?
I have one.
Yes.
I'm just curious because as I went through it quite a bit, I was just like, boy, that's going to take some staff time. I mean, do we have a pretty good handle on the amount of staff time that this could possibly take? The thing I kept falling back on, though, is like, we don't really have a lot of permits applied for, right? I mean, how much time is it going to take staff to implement some of these?
Do you want to just take a stab at that? I would say that though we've only had one permit for a new well site since I've been here.
The thing that I'm curious about is like the transmission lines and this sort of stuff.
Yeah.
Like, they just go relocate something or things. I mean, is there town staff having to go? Some of that I wasn't for sure clear on when the staff would be, interacting.
We also are hiring the oil and gas liaison, which this will be their position.
I mean, is it going to be more than just what that one person can handle?
I don't believe so.
No?
No, I don't believe so. Anything that comes in the form of an application, and that is a change of use or a new application for a new location, all of that time is going to be paid for by the applicant. And that includes my time if you wanted me to review, or any experts if you wanted them to review something very specific like a noise plan or a light pollution plan. Those could all be reviewed by experts, and that would be paid for by the applicant. So I don't think that it's going to put undue pressure on existing staff.
Only last question that I still don't know if I fully felt good about, because I was asked about this from people, was, well, what if I get annexed? And I said, well, I mean, that typically would mean now you're going to fall under the town rules. I mean,
Not typically.
I know, I didn't want to just say, well, then you're gonna, I wanted to make it soft a little bit. I just struggle a little with, with existing things going on properties, or we annexed large things. But I mean, we always annex for development. So it's not like you're annexing it because they're doing a gas project.
Right.
But I did have people around town that are just on the outskirts ask that question. And I don't know, in your opinion, does it devalue their land?
To get annexed?
No, just because they're next to Frederick. I thought, I don't know, I can't
Oh,
answer
no,
that.
no, in fact,
They're still
quite
in
the
Weld
contrary.
County, they still can do Weld County oil and gas work, whatever, follow their rules.
They certainly can. And if they, just my opinion here, if they were to do something like a extraordinarily large oil and gas development just outside of Frederick, you would want to be involved in that, because that is going to impact your residents. Right. You have control over your jurisdiction, and things come into your jurisdiction, they are going to have to comply with the new rules. And there's a real benefit to that because of higher density development, infrastructure, and all being part of this great town. I don't think that there are certainly implications to oil and gas development on property. Buying a piece of property with 5 derelict oil and gas locations on it is going to devalue it. Absolutely. Cleaning it up, as we're trying to do, is going to raise the property values.
And that's because that's what we're trying to do, is do that. Anyway, I just thought I'd bring it up since I was asked that question a few times. I thought I knew the answer, and I did.
There are no further questions. I think you all will have another opportunity if you think of a question. But I think at this time, I would invite public comment on this item. I know, Steve, you are signed up to speak. If anyone else would like to just raise your hand, or as soon as Steve is finished, you're welcome to join us at the podium. Steve, if you don't mind just reminding us of your name and address for the record, and it's all yours.
My name is Steve Gerber. I'm representing Life Fellowship Church here in Frederick. Before I start, I guess I'm a general comment or when you speak, is it possible to really use your mics a little more? I know I got a lot of comments from the people that could not hear what was going on and what was being said. And I know I even have trouble, I'm hard of hearing. And so that would really help those of us that are out here.
You bet. Thank you for the suggestion.
I'm not going to spend a lot of time talking. I've inundated you with all my comments. And I apologize for the length of those, but I really did want to emphasize our concerns.
Sorry, Steve, do you mind just pausing for just a moment? Our Civic Plus is giving us a tutorial on how to use it.
I didn't touch anything. Oh, there you go, muted.
User error. It's okay. It's okay. Thank you.
Okay. I want to start out by thanking Allie and Matt. They spent a lot of time with me and putting up with my comments, and Matt spent a lot of time even last night late on the phone, and so I appreciate that a lot. I also want to thank you, Mayor and trustees, for listening to us and to our concerns and addressing the concerns that we have at Life Fellowship for the property, and so that is well appreciated. I do want to remind everyone that from the beginning, our concerns were directed toward the setbacks limits for abandoned oil and gas wells, which is only a small part of this ordinance. And that has been our focus. Our concerns were heard and improvements were made to the ordinance, specifically addressing the well abandonment within the previous 5 years of the request, which will include 3 of the 4 wells that we're abandoning on our property. And so that will be very helpful. The 4th well will require, per the ordinance, additional information, and which I believe the ordinance does not specify the abandonment criteria near as clearly. In general, I believe the criteria to be requested primarily for abandoned wells over 5 years is too generic and allows for too much non-specific information to be requested. Matt and I disagree on this point. Matt believes that what I call ambiguity to be necessary for dealing with unforeseen circumstances, but he can better explain his position on that. As the ordinance relates specifically to the criteria that will be necessary to obtain the reduced setback for the 4th well on the Life Fellowship property, the correspondence I've received from Allie, my discussions with Matt and Allie have left me with a comfort level that I believe will allow for the reduced setback with minimal effort, and therefore would allow our project to proceed unimpeded. But I want to be clear that being unable to obtain authorization for a reduced setback for that 4th well would have the same impact to Life Fellowship and our property as was discussed during the last trustee meeting. It would be devastating still. And so although it's my opinion that this portion of the ordinance could be improved with more specificity, I won't make any more further objections. It's not what I would like to see. But anyway, I just want to thank everyone for working with us through this process and for any as we continue on and actually get into the actual abandonment of that. The only other comment I have regards to something that was just brought up here, if the API says you can't require plugging of well, can you require replugging? So, because I know that's one of the requirements that's in the ordinance. Anyway, if anybody has any questions, that's all I've got.
Thank you. Any questions? No? No. Thank you. I know you feel like you've burdened us in some way. You have not. We appreciate your due diligence. And I think it's important to anyone who wants to develop in Frederick and keep your congregation and community in Frederick that we do our due diligence as well. So I commend you for it, and it's always welcomed and supported from our perspective. So thank you for your time.
Thank you.
May I borrow Matt? Hi, one more time, please. 2 comments then on API on replugging. Would you care to share your perspective on whether our language has opportunities to hold the industry accountable for replugging?
Well, so I think that what Steve was remarking on is if a well wasn't plugged to today's standards, we require it to be replugged in order for them to have the closer setback. We don't have the ability to require them to replug it. We do have the ability to give them incentive to replug it, which is the closer setback.
Thank you. And I think with the comment on the 4th well, do you feel, and maybe Allie as well, do you feel that this is something that could be addressed through the application process of this development in partnership and possibly the variance request, or do you see some resolution or potential solutions to this 4th well?
I think that the solutions to the 4th well are in the code amendment itself as written. A lot of the specificity that is being requested, and I understand the desire for that, is really something that comes out of the ordinance and is in the forms that we are going to create in the next couple of months as a result of these ordinances. The form is the application. Here's what you need to fill out. Here's the information required. And that's going to be specific. There are going to be needs to change that as the industry changes and as our requirements change. And we're going to be able to do that without having to come to you. We're going to be able to just change that form rather than having to go through a new ordinance. And I think that's the way that you've done it in the past, and that's the way we are intending to do it with this ordinance as well.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions, comments, concerns from the board? Are there any other community members who wish to speak during this public hearing? Okay. With that, I will close the public hearing and turn it over to the board for direction, please. If you all need a moment, that's okay too. Oh, yes, if you don't mind sharing resolutions on the screen, that would be helpful. Thank you. Thanks, Allie.
Madam Mayor, I move to approve ordinance 1400, which adopts the land use code amendment package as finalized by the town attorney and rescinds ordinance number 1392, which created a temporary moratorium for oil and gas development.
Second. So motion and a second. Any further discussion to approve ordinance 1400, and it rescinds, yes, 1392. So
Do both.
to do both, yes. Motion and a second. Any other discussion? No? Can we take the vote, please?
Sure. Trustee March,
Yes.
Trustee Tavelli,
Yes.
Trustee Mahan,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Brown,
Yes.
Trustee Lamont,
Yes.
Trustee Padilla,
Yes.
Motion passes 6-0.
Cool. Do you want to share any hesitation? It's okay.
Well, I just want to say, I surely appreciate you guys listening to my concerns. I had a lot of people come to me that just don't want anything. So it was difficult for me to go between the two. But, I don't know. I don't think this has it's not going to change a lot. But anyway, that was my concern. I do think a lot of, like you said, there's a lot of negativity towards this. So that's what my hesitation comes from.
Sure.
And working around the business, I know that's a lot of people's livelihoods, and they take this as a slap in the face that we're outlawing oil and gas. And I hate that that's the way it's being taken. Hopefully that's not the way it is when it's implemented. So
Right. It's a great point to bring up. I think it's important to Frederick as a whole, as an entire community, to consider that we asked for the moratorium in the first place to not be anti-oil and gas or not necessarily be pro-oil and gas, but to take a pause and say, hey, this feels really one-sided and it feels like we're not involved in the conversation. And when we do have applications or we do have spills or we do have development that has oil and gas sites on it, we seem to be the only party that's responsible for the financial aspect, the risk, and the public safety. So you all said that doesn't seem fair and doesn't seem reasonable. It doesn't seem like as policymakers that we're actually doing our job. So you said, let's take a pause. You did so. I think that's good governance to take a moment, hear from your community, talk to legal team members, talk to the oil and gas industry and say, hey, we're not against you. We're trying to better understand you, and we're trying to put policy in place to make it standardized so that you all have the same experience in oil and gas production in the town of Frederick. I think that's commendable, and I know uncomfortable, and certainly not popular in Weld County, but I feel it necessary to repeat. We are not anti-oil and gas. This ordinance does not ban oil and gas. This improves our partnership and relationship with the oil and gas industry, and it does put our residents first. So,
and I really love staff to hopefully reflect that to those people.
I think they will. So, thank you. Thank you for all of your work. Now I'm lost. Okay, we have item I, which is an additional public hearing. So I will open the public hearing on item I, and we will hear all of those components. Matt, thank you so much for your time. Do you all want to take a moment, or are you okay to move forward? Good to move forward? Okay, all right.
Thanks, Matt.
Okay, thank you.
Have any more tutorials you want to go through?
What the hell happened? It just started.
Between your sound and all my screen wants to do is zoom in and zoom out. It doesn't want to scroll down the page, it just wants to zoom in.
So
It's
like
almost,
admin.
yeah.
It's an admin training.
I can't even log into mine.
We need to combine systems.
Well, that's because that's
Fine. Oh my heck. Okay. Yeah, it doesn't want to. Trish, it's okay. I think it just probably all needs an update.
we need more training. We're learning.
More training.
This is a new vehicle.
Okay,
Oh, okay, perfect.
I guess we are taking a moment then. We'll fix it.
We are what?
We're going to take a brief second here.
Oh, wait a minute.
If that's
Mine
okay.
just came on.
We're just going to take a 2-minute recess. Thank you.
Oh, that's right. Yeah. Okay.
I've got mine agenda details.
to work on our technical difficulties. We do have an additional public hearing tonight on our fiscal year 2025 proposed budget. So if Curtis could join us at the podium, I will now open the public hearing, and now all matters discussed within this item will be a matter of record in our public hearing.
Good evening, Mayor Kreitz and Board of Trustees. As stated, this is the first of two scheduled public hearings for the fiscal year 2025 proposed budget. The Town of Frederick Board must receive the preliminary budget no later than October 15th of each year. In order to remain compliant with Colorado Revised Statute, you did receive the preliminary budget during our first budget work session on October 8th. And since then, we've, of course, had multiple study session conversations surrounding all of the operating and maintenance line items and capital improvement projects. The intent of this public hearing is to provide the public an opportunity for comment or questions. The proposed budget will remain available either via the town website or hard copy, both at Town Hall and Administrative Services. I'd be happy to answer any final questions.
If I could just add for the record, this will be the first of two hearings. And so, the reason we're not going super in depth is because you'll see this again in December.
Correct. December 10th will be the adoption of the 25 budget.
Apologies, I'm trying to get to the item because I do have a question. Sorry. Technology. Eventually it will open, I'm sorry.
It's okay.
Else have a question right now?
Nope.
It's going to do its own thing. No questions?
No.
We've had conversations about capital improvement. We've had conversations about our budget. We've had conversation about funds. You all feel well versed on your 2025 proposed budget. I think there's, Brian, I sent you a message today just asking for clarity on there are components of some of our infrastructure that are in capital improvement, but I don't know that it specifically called out on the Bella Rosa intersection. That's part of our capital improvement, but mill and overlay on Bella Rosa Parkway. I would like to make sure that that's clearly included in our budget, and the verbiage for the mill and overlay on Bella Rosa is included as well.
Absolutely. I can ensure that the narrative includes that addition and make sure that the budget, I'm nearly certain that the budget does account for it.
Yes.
I just probably need clarity in the description.
That would be helpful. Thank you.
And the mill and overlay doesn't extend all the way. I think it's up to a certain portion of Bella Rosa, but I believe maybe let us come back, or we'll send a confirmation email out just to how long of that stretch. And then that also plays into our $1 million roughly maintenance program within the CIP that we can check on as well. I don't think that it's programmed in there, but it does have mill and overlay for Bella Rosa up to a certain point.
Okay. I think that might be worth a conversation to make sure that maybe we could just spend some time with Jason Berg and the engineering team to better understand which roads have had mill and overlay, crack seal, slurry seal, all of those things. At one point we talked about having that be public and sharing with the community which roads have had those improvements over time. So maybe I'm just not versed in what that looks like, but that tends to be the road that I hear from community members most often. And I would like to just share a strong voice that I do think we need to be providing mill and overlay on the entirety of Bella Rosa Parkway. I think that we have hindered that population in those neighborhoods in that area over the summer with construction. I think the least we can do is repair the very road that they've been asking us to do for a couple of years. So I do not know if it is in the cycle of time to actually mill and overlay, but I think we need to expedite that conversation.
Yeah,
Please.
we'll get information out and follow up with the board before the next public hearing on December 10th.
Wonderful. I appreciate that. Thank you.
Mayor, what area are you specifically talking about on Belrose, from Colorado Summit to Silver Birch, or from Colorado to Frontage Road?
Colorado to Silver Birch in particular. Are you hearing otherwise? Yes.
I'm hearing otherwise, but
Okay.
I'm sure that the Silver Birch to Silver Birch would be appreciated because
Yeah. Well, I think from Silver Birch to the frontage road, there are development applications, maybe not in review, but there are impacts of those developments that they would participate in the mill and overlay on that section of the road, if I'm not mistaken. But we are developed up to Silver Birch, so no reason why we shouldn't finish that road. All I'm asking for is a conversation between your teams, and if you don't mind bringing back clarity to us before December 10th on whether it does or doesn't include, or do we need to have a budget amendment conversation or a priority conversation, whatever, but let's please make sure that voice is heard. Thank you.
Excuse me.
Anyone have any other budget comments?
nothing.
It's great. You're
Okay.
doing a great job.
Thank you, board. Appreciate it.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you. We do have an opportunity for public comments. I don't know if there's any actually public members that would like to speak on this really fun topic of the budget, but you're welcome to. I'll leave it open for just a moment. We didn't receive any comments from the community.
No,
Nope.
no, Mayor.
Okay.
That's what makes the topic thing is budgets.
It was hard.
Great. Okay. No other questions. No comments from the community. Nice, clean budget. We now will close the public hearing, and I will ask for direction from the board, please.
Or there shouldn't direction. It was just the first hearing.
Oh, so we don't actually need to have even had a public hearing, or we do?
We've done that customarily, yes.
Yeah, okay.
It's not like we do a first reading and a second reading.
But do you need an approval since it's approval or denial since it's in a public hearing right now? No, okay.
Just introduce it.
Thank you for the clarification.
Okay, great.
Right.
And Curtis,
Well
thank you
done,
for you
Curtis.
and your
Thank you.
team. Wonderful job.
Yes. Okay, resolution number 63, item J. Strange process. Everybody leaves. I love it.
Good evening, Mayor and Board of Trustees. Like I mentioned in the work session, before you tonight is the non-potable water master plan for approval. This ties into the strategic plan goal of strategic, reliable, and sustainable infrastructure. This plan will be used to guide the town of Frederick in how to improve and expand our existing raw water infrastructure. Again, our big tree of the town of Frederick water. I think this, yep, there you go. Raw water master plan. It's one of our main master plans that guide how we develop our infrastructure in the town of Frederick. So the last raw water master plan was done in 2008. We've had a lot of development since then. We've also done a lot of planning work since then, specifically the long-term and short-term water resources plans, the water efficiency plan, as well as our water court change for the Lower Boulder water. That's really important for the expansion of our non-potable system. Without that water, we shouldn't be expanding our non-potable system because we wouldn't have water to put into that. As we're nearing the end of that case, with that hopefully completing the end of this year or into early next year, we will have water available as those water rights are converted over to be used within our system. So as we move towards the new plan, we have very specific goals for that new plan. Specifically, how do we improve the service to existing and future residents? It outlines the build out of the system in a short-term and long-term map. We evaluate the reliability and sustainability of our infrastructure. We have a pretty unique system. It's built off of an old water treatment location out of Millivac Lake. So some of that infrastructure is pretty old, but a lot of that is very new. You'll see that in some of the recommendations further in this presentation. Like I said, the short and long-term plans. This includes a project estimate for the short-term plans, so that way we can plan for affording those projects. We've also incorporated information from the recently adopted comp plan, the land use code, and other master plans to make sure that it's an integrated plan with our other plans. Like Colby said, we have a lot of master plans. We've done a lot of work. Trying to get those talked together can be a little difficult, but we are trying to get them to work together. In 2023, the town of Frederick did some stakeholder engagement as part of our potable water master plan. We lumped that together since we're talking water. The overall themes of that, a lot of our community wants us to be utilizing that non-potable water for irrigation instead of using treated water for irrigation. That's something that staff and the board has supported in the past as well. The water quality at Millivac is something that comes up very often. You heard Colby talk about this briefly earlier today. They've done a lot of great things to improve the water quality. If you go out there today, it is looking considerably better, smells better. They've made a lot of improvements out there. So we hear that from the community, and we're actively working to improve that. As well as the desire for development to pay their fair share as developers are expanding out, requiring them to install system expansion to get the non-potable system to their property, something that we do promote. Oh, sorry. And also putting their money where our mouth are, making those improvements to our internal parks, utilizing the water-wise landscaping through some of our programs that we offer, as well as irrigation improvements through our programs. So we continue to expand our non-potable water system with this plan to irrigate existing and future open spaces. We do have a number of existing developments that do not have a non-potable system. So this plan identifies how we can expand our existing system to those existing parks for conversion projects. Again, just reinforcing that we have improved the water quality, but there's still some work to do. One of the other things that the town of Frederick is doing is pursuing a direct use water supply designation that helps us with improving the water quality in Millivac by stating that, yes, we intend to use that source as a treated water location in the future, and that does drive certain improvements upstream of the water that goes into the reservoir. Affordability of water, again, making sure that developers pay their fair share for system expansion improvements as necessary and appropriate. Low water landscaping, the master plan does prioritize and have assumptions built in that certain areas are going to be low water use plantings, limited turf, turf in those specific areas like parks where it's going to be actively used. Not a lot of non-functional turf. We've been talking a lot about that recently. So our existing non-potable water system, we do have two distinct sides of our community. Our non-potable system is very similar, where it's split by the interstate. A lot of that has to do with the existing Millivac Lake. Like I said, we use that for potable water. We used that as the backbone for the system as we originally expanded. And then we expanded further to Centennial Park. We have a pond there, to the golf courses just north of the lake. That's the primary extent of our system on the west side, on the east side. On the west side, it's very different, where there are way more ditches and laterals and water rights that were historically used for irrigated farm. There's also some storage on that side for the shores on Plum Creek. Future development, there's a lot of gravel pits and gravel mines in this area that are used currently for water storage. So there's a lot more availability of water resources on the west side. So this plan is primarily focused on new resources that need to be constructed. Most of that's going to be on the east side of town. The west side of town, the intent that in the future, as those build out, they'll have direct connections to ditches to have access to those resources that are available in that area that are lacking on the west side, the east side of the community. So this is a short-term capital improvements map. Again, you can see Millivac Lake, that's the center, branching out north and south. This large line, that's the existing infrastructure, as well as this short stent that goes over across. A lot of these numbers are future expansions of the system off of that primary backbone that we have. There's a significant improvement to get water out to, at the end of that system is Raspberry Residential, as well as a significant improvement to the Centennial Park Pond to help with pressures and expand that system, making Centennial Park more of a regional pond to serve out of that. That helps us to balance some of the improvements that we would have had to make to the system coming directly out of Millivac, since we do have space and capacity to expand and improve the system for Centennial, with some future development plans in that area that could cause relocation of that pond. It's a good time to think, so if we are going to move it, how can we best use that facility if we do need to be making some improvements? So most of these listed for the project numbers, most of those are for parks to be converted. There is the next slide. So the CIP list, that's the grand list of, this is, if we had all the money in the world, this is what we could do to convert those parks. It might not make sense to convert all of those parks. We'll have to look at that with the planning department and have a conversation of, with it costing, say, $1 million to do water line improvements to get it out there, but the water that we're using on the park is only worth $500,000 for that CBT water. Does it make more sense to make that a more efficient park? Or do we want to move forward with conversion on that? We have an ongoing capital improvement planning group that meets to discuss these capital improvement projects. So we will be coordinating and seeing if there are any overlaps for some of those extension trunk lines. We want to make sure that we're coordinating that with transportation. If they have a transportation project in the area, making sure that we're not going in and cutting up a road that was just recently improved. Thank you.
What? That never happens.
Yep. So the cost for that long list is about $18.6 million. Again, that's if we did everything. It's a pretty high price tag. Only 14.6 million of those is for conversions of parks to CBT. Sorry, from CBT to non-potable. A bulk of that cost is the cost to upgrade that old potable water infrastructure that we co-opted as the primary backbone of the raw water system when we first made that conversion. It is an old AC pipe, asbestos concrete pipe. That's just kind of a waiting thing. You want to leave it alone in the ground until you do have an issue with it, and then you want to replace it. It's getting near the end of its service life to be most protective of our system and most sustainable. It makes sense to proactively replace that. So if we did convert all of those parks listed in that short-term plan, that would save the town 243 CBT units, assuming everything is converted over. That's a lot of water that would go back to the town's portfolio to be used in other ways. The value of that amount of water is about $17 million right now, with what we're assuming is about $70,000 per unit if we went out to buy that much water. So that's a significant cost savings. Again, as we go through and implement this capital improvement plan, we'll want to make sure that we're talking with parks and making sure if it does make the most sense to have that monetary investment in the raw water system, or if we want to do more of a conversion. This is the long-term capital improvement plan. We don't have any cost estimates to this because this is so far in the future. Right now, that short-term raw water master plan list is about 20-year for implementation. So this is beyond that. A lot of that includes infrastructure improvements beyond what we have currently shown. So if a development is to come in and they want to extend our system, they would obviously be on the hook for paying for that extension because it's beyond our existing system to serve future development. There's also some pipeline expansion that can be handled in a multitude of ways. You can replace the line, you can add parallel lines. So this future plan It's really a placeholder for, as we get towards that and we grow towards that, then those will start being lumped into our capital improvement plan as we knock out some of those other ones. This is a plan that we'll probably want to update every 5 to 7 years, make sure that it's up to date with how we have developed. Because if we don't have that plan in place, it's hard to communicate with the development community and our existing residents how we are planning to improve that service. Are there any questions tonight about the proposed plan?
Considering the approval of the plan, knowing that every 5 to 7 years we'll update and amend the plan, but we'll still be part of the conversation on the budgetary components of the plan. Those are additional conversations. That said, are there ways that the 18 million can be phased, or are we going to need to expect that all 18 million will need to be spent at one time?
So the 18 million right now, for the exercise with the water rate study, we broke that out into about a 20-year time frame and broke it into basically starting from the existing infrastructure, what can we convert over easily for those short extensions out. Some of those projects include Fireman's Park, the Coal Ridge Park. Those are pretty easy ones to extend, very short. Off of our existing infrastructure, as well as the Fox Run Park up there. That's another great candidate. And then we do have all the flexibility in the world to make those conversions as we decide to go through that rate setting exercise. Right now, that's just the time frame. The only thing that I would say are more pressing is that improvement to the Centennial Park Pond for an expansion that helps with the service to those existing customers, as well as that pipeline number 1 from Millivac, and then ongoing improvements to the pump station. They're listed here, but those are improvements that we would be making regardless of this plan being in place. Pump replacements, additional sustaining pumps to help with wear on our large expensive pumps. Those are just some smart investments that we can make in our system.
And the construction aspect, and I appreciate you working with other departments on, eliminating or downsizing as often as possible the hindrance on community members. But how long does each one of these updates typically take? Is this a week-long project to change out infrastructure? Is it a month? Do you have an estimate on how long each one of these updates in these phases would take?
I would say a month to 4 months potentially. Just depends on the extent of that update. There would be updates necessary to the irrigation system itself, changing out heads, potential for changing the point of entry into the irrigation system, depending on where the potable water system comes into the meter and where the raw water system makes sense to extend it out, because we don't want to pay more to extend a raw water line further than we need to. So that part, I'm not sure how long that would take to do that type of conversion. But getting stuff in the road and those types of extensions, some of these are going to be pretty short. Like I said, for like the Coal Ridge Park, Fireman's Park, it's just going across one single road. That would take maybe two weeks if you ran into issues. And then the park conversion comes after that. So it's really kind of all over the board. I would say the longest one is going to be that one from Millivac Lake down. You could do that in phases, so we're limiting the impact, the duration of that impact. Do maybe half a mile at a time to try to reduce that impact.
Thinking about that, there doesn't sound to be or seem to be any risk in the time to convert. So I know there's construction, but we're not putting our parks at risk of not being watered for a period of time and turf dying because we're unable to water, right? There's no downtime of water usage planned.
Correct, yes, because those demands are being met out of our current portfolio. The only time that would come into an issue is if we have, for some reason, a cutback on our CPT portfolio as far as what water we can get out of that portfolio versus what water we can get out of our raw water portfolio. That is a game that we're going to have to play in the future as we look forward to treating water out of Millivac and having that reuse water being the backfeed into the non-potable system. It's going to be an interesting time as we navigate that switch over. That's another good reason why we're updating these plans, because the source for that system is going to change significantly in the next 10 years.
That's helpful. Thank you. Y'all have any questions? It's a lot, isn't it? I know.
Yes, it should be done.
It should.
Geez, we've been talking about trying to get non-potable water in here since you and I were put on the board.
Right.
It's an expensive thing, but if it can be done,
Right.
maybe Uncle Sam can kick in some grant money in places. I don't know.
Nice.
Has to be done, but we'll get it done.
Right.
I think we can.
I think so.
Confident. You can
It
do
shows
this.
good stewardship that the town does it first on town property. Makes sense. Any other questions, comments, concerns? We're not spending $18 million today. We're considering the approval of the master plan itself to then consider spending $18 million. Yeah. See, it's not so bad. It's like a coupon.
Yeah. Coupon, that's the word.
Right.
Promise for a better future.
Okay. Board, I would appreciate some direction. Sarah, I don't think we have any other questions, but thank you. Thank you for all of your work on this.
Thank you.
We appreciate it.
Madam Mayor, I move to approve Resolution 24-R-63.
Second.
Motion and a second. Any further discussion? No?
Trustee Padilla?
Yes.
Trustee March?
Yes.
Trustee Mahan?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Brown?
Yes.
Trustee Lamont?
Yes.
Trustee DeValley?
Yes.
Motion passes 6-0.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, Sarah.
Thanks, Sarah.
Yes, appreciate you. All right, final action agenda item this evening. We have Tina presenting resolution number 64, granting a master license agreement for fiber network.
So I'll be taking over for Tina because
Oh.
she is ill today.
Oh, no, I'm sorry.
As is our group, our contingency from Allo. So we have the folks from Intrepid here this evening. So we're going to do our best to pinch hit. That being said, as the board recalls, part of your retreat earlier this year was identifying the desperate need that the business community and residents have for more reliable and better internet services throughout the community. As a result of that direction from the board, we posted what we called an RFI, a request for information, because we're not purchasing services per se, so it wasn't a bid or proposals. We did have 4 providers respond to that RFI, one of which was classified non-responsive because it didn't answer any of the questions that we posed. Those questions were more or less based off the feedback we received from the board, kind of what community needs are, ubiquitous build throughout the east and west side of the community, making sure that the residences as well as the business community were taken care of, looking at opportunities for partnership and those types of things. Staff had 3 different interviews with different providers. After that information gathering, we kind of consolidated that information and provided it to the board. You all received that information and gave us direction after the executive session, to move forward with developing the contracts that you see before you this evening with Intrepid and Allo Communications by extension. So with that, I'm going to turn the time over to our friends from Intrepid to kind of talk about their proposal and plan. And I'll make sure I get them. And we can answer any questions you may have.
Great.
Good evening.
Hi.
Thank you for having us this afternoon. On behalf of Intrepid, my name is Michael Schroer. I'm the Business Development Coordinator.
I'm Alex Williams, and I'm the Business Development Manager.
And thank you, Jason, for helping us get thus far. We're just going to tell you a little bit about Intrepid.
Lift the
And
mic up if you need.
Yeah, it's okay.
You don't have to slouch.
It's all yours. Do whatever you'd like.
tell you a little bit about Intrepid and what we hope to do with your town.
Great.
So Intrepid is built up of an extensive leadership team with over 140 years of cumulative experience in the telecom industry. Since our inception in 2021, launched under Brookfield Asset Management, we've constructed over 4 million feet fiber across Colorado and Minnesota, and are working on over 3.5 million homes to come in the next few years. Also, at any point, please feel free to stop us and ask any questions.
Thank you.
Here again is that team of seasoned executives that we have running Intrepid. While all of them have fairly varied backgrounds as far as the companies they come from, that all funnels into an extremely talented and well-read leadership team that is dedicated in giving the best service possible in all markets and all towns that we attempt to do our work in.
So over the span of 24 months from when we got founded, we're able to make a lot of progress. That includes breaking ground in Pueblo as well as North Glen within 12 months of our founding. Fast forwarding a year from then, we were able to break ground in Bloomington, Minnesota. Since then, we've also announced multiple expansion markets. And then just recently this year, we actually locked in a $290 million debt financing on top of our equity from Brookfield, who's our financial backer. Going into Brookfield, they are one of the largest investors. They have about $1 trillion in assets. They focus a lot on digital infrastructure. So that's stuff like data centers, internet service providers, and fiber companies like us.
So Intrepid specifically works in providing open access fiber to the home networks. What this means, especially in how it's going to benefit Frederick, is there's one build that needs to be done to service the residences of the town. And on that one network, after one build, multiple internet service providers can then begin providing service. This leaves internet service providers free to focus on the customer experience. Customers have a greater variety of choice and flexibility in their pricing options, and Intrepid just focuses on what we do best, which is operating and maintaining the network that we've constructed. A little bit of the value of fiber in almost every way. I'll just say every way. It's a better technology than standard coax or cable internet that is currently provided to this area. Greater capacity, greater quality. It's more reliable, more secure, and with most services that are out there, it will also be more cost effective to residences. So unfortunately, our partner Allo was not able to send out their representative this afternoon. He's sick, and it's just better for everybody if he stays home. Allo is our chosen partner for the city. They're an extremely experienced provider of internet services. They've been doing so since 2003 and have been providing fiber services on their own networks at 1 gigabit symmetrical services in Erie and Greeley, as well as a few other cities in Colorado. So they're familiar with the area, and they're familiar in providing the exact services that are being requested by the town.
All right, so jumping into deployment.
If I could back up just a moment. One of the other things that, as you all saw in the materials that were provided to you previously from the board, that I think it's important if we have folks in the community that are listening into the conversation, is one of the things that Allo typically does in all of their builds that we've seen in all of the communities that they've been a part is that they'll open a retail location somewhere in the community's downtown. And so I know that's important to this community, that we have kind of the only functioning downtown in the Carbon Valley, and we want to do what we can to help support that. And part of the approach from Allo was to make sure that they have a presence in our local downtown to help provide some of that traffic downtown to help make it more flourishing. So it's not highlighted in this slide. If they were here, I would imagine they would talk all about that piece as well.
right, so here's a list of some of the inaugural cities that we've started building in across Colorado and Minnesota. We would be extremely excited about the opportunity to add Frederick to this list. You can go to the next slide. So with the development, with the construction, with the oversight, obviously the biggest importance for us is going to be safety, quality, and then also making sure that we're not super invasive of all of these citizens of Frederick. So we are going to have teams actually here locally on site, making sure that they're doing all the inspections, making sure that they're holding up to OSHA standards when it comes to safety. And then we're going to work with you guys, the city, to make sure we're as least invasive as possible and making sure we're not taking up everyone's day-to-day time.
And something even that bears mentioning is you were mentioning repairing roads in a few different parts of the town. We'd be very interested in working with you on where those roads are going to be repaired and when, so that we can time certain parts of the build and not have to undo or redo work. And going into that a little bit more is some of the installation types we use. We prefer aerial installation, which is just where we attach to existing utility poles, put our fiber up next to all the other cables that are there. In this photo, there's a splice case as well as a splitter box. That's just how the fiber is stored on the cable and how it eventually gets to homes or any other addresses. Alternatively, we do underground construction, which our preferred method for is directional boring. It's not extremely invasive, and we make sure that any vendors that we're using are diligent in their repairs, and any areas that we have to bore are better or as good as we found them. Our secondary method, which is less preferred, is micro trenching, and in some of our discussions with the town, that also seemed like a not a preferred method by you, but again, it's not even a preferred method by us.
Jason, do you know or anybody for that matter, do you know the ratio of above ground power lines and connectivity lines that we have versus underground?
I don't know about a percentage, but I would say the majority of historic downtown area is still all overhead. And I think the vast majority of all of the rest of the community is all underground, and that doesn't have power poles. In terms of areas where micro trenching might be appropriate, is in some of those areas that might be somewhat congested, so if we're not boring kind of unseen. We've talked with Intrepid kind of about our requirements that are, I would say, unique to some degree because of where we are at, in requiring them to do a bunch of potholing before they go through the process and then in the design, so that they know exactly where everything is. A lot of communities allow you to pothole as you go, but considering how many oil and gas lines we have running through here, how many sewer lines, we met with the sanitation district just this last week regarding some of their concerns. We were meeting for other reasons, but I brought this up while we had it, and so they're going to get over some information to us about where they're most concerned about their infrastructure being a little bit more shallow than you might expect, so that we can provide that to the design team, so that we're trying to minimize all those impacts. But I would imagine here in Frederick that a lot of our spaces are probably in that underground realm, just to the age of most of the community.
Kind of to touch on that from our end, I've been out into the field and seen our active construction, and with the boring machine, which is a little small right there, as well as a really tiny one over there, my apologies, I've seen the way that they direct the drill and do locates every few feet as the drill is moving forward. So it's beyond standard practice for us to be aware of making locates and not hitting any existing utilities that are already there. So our only above ground piece of equipment is this OLT cabinet, or the optical line terminal. For Frederick, we'll probably only need one of these, and we'll place it very inconspicuously, so it's not just a large box sticking out of the ground somewhere like a sore thumb. And we'll also keep it in a safe area away from traffic. In the upper left here, we partnered with the town of Louisville to wrap their OLTs with some artwork and some historical imagery for the town, and we'd be more than happy to do that here as well. Here is the design that we had developed preliminarily this year before we had entered the RFI process. This design covers a large majority of the residential addresses as well as a few hundred business addresses and anchor locations within the town boundary. And we are willing to expand this design as well as hit any points that are not addressed in this as we move forward with the city to make sure that we're growing along with Frederick.
This is just initial reach.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
And as we move forward, we'll pair with our vendors in an area to get more street level, low level designs, as we would call them.
So for community outreach, we do focus on a couple of different things. We really just want to focus. We really just want to focus on educating the citizens so they understand what's going on, how it's going to benefit them. So where permitted, we will put up different door hangers. We can do yard signs, again, making sure that citizens know what's going on, who they can reach out to if they do have any questions.
And a point of also these door hangers with the and the lawn signs with our phone number on them is to take away any traffic from your phones and make sure that any complaints or questions or concerns are directed to our teams and our vendors. But one of the last things we want is for your offices to be clogged with, why is there a giant drill in my front yard?
Would you then notify the town that you've had those communications from our residents? At least let us know.
If it were requested, we normally intake those complaints or comments and then deal with them in our own time, in a timely manner, I should also say, which we'll talk about actually in one of the upcoming slides. So this is our issue response and resolution portal. What's seen on the screen here is a ticket that is developed whenever a complaint or a question or a comment comes through. This is then handled by our intake team who can target the response and find a resolution between 24 and 72 hours of the problem arising.
And Madam Mayor, to your point, during the interview process with all of the different providers that we're interviewing, staff highlighted this as a great opportunity because they are able to provide these analytics if we would like to, and we can do that on a regular cadence so that the town can kind of see what's going on, where the issue spots might be, and so we want to be proactive in that regard. But in terms of all of the issue response and things that all of the providers were submitting during that process, this was by far what we felt was the most accurate in terms of the ability to give us information as the town so they can generate this into a report for us as opposed to just giving us colloquial or handling things.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's probably a discussion that you'll have with our team, which is perfectly reasonable. But I can think of, even some of our businesses that might express frustrations. I'm sure our economic development team would like to hear that. And not that they want to chastise you, but they will probably want to stop out there and check in on those businesses. And it's really more of a customer service aspect from our perspective than it is to hold you accountable to criticism or critiques from our community. I think we just want to make sure that we add a level of our Frederick culture to it too.
Well, anything to increase the level of communication between the town and Allo and Intrepid will be highly beneficial to both parties. And I think also this speaks to the experience that our leadership team has to have foreseen this kind of a problem and develop something like this. This is similar to some of our network tech that allows us to see when there are any problems with service or the network, and it can be immediately dealt with.
So for next steps, really where we're currently at is finalizing the agreement. And then once we do finalize the agreement, we'll be moving on to the low-level design that Michael mentioned earlier, and then really submitting all the different permits we need to.
Okay. Cool.
Anybody has any questions at this time?
On the one format that you, excuse me, on the one format you showed the map, the initial map of the town, and how are you going to incorporate the west side of our town, the west side of I-25, and that, how are we going to make sure those people get this same service?
Well, in the same way that we had initially targeted the homes that are covered in that map, that was based on a greater plan that didn't incorporate those areas initially, but we're working to redo that map and incorporate those areas to cover those homes, cover as many residences as we can.
This isn't that,
businesses as well.
how long does that take? How long does it take to provide fiber for the entire town? Approximately, I don't.
The entire build is slated to take 18 months. Right now, we have funding set for beginning in December of this year if the agreement can go through. And that would finish by, I think, February of 26, so around 18 months. If I did my math wrong, I might have.
It's okay.
Part of what's unique about this scenario is you have Allo, who's currently building out Erie, as I understand it. And as you're likely aware, just south of 52, Erie has Summerfield, I think is the name of that project that they're working, and I think several hundred homes that Allo would be wanting to connect to for their Erie build. And so this provides them the opportunity to connect all of the west side of I-25, both the Erie portion and the Frederick portion. So it's on their priority list as well.
It sounds like you already have communication enablement for our residents. Maybe just requesting, if approved tonight, that you work with our communications team so that they also can share what's happening in the Frederick community from our perspective and through a Frederick narrative. I think that would be appreciated. So I don't know if you've been introduced yet to our communications team, but I would highly recommend that and appreciate you letting them know updates so that they can let our residents know what to expect and who to call and when to expect completion, most importantly.
I think I have a meeting set Thursday morning.
Great. Thank you.
Yeah, so in terms of kind of wrapping up the agenda item before you've got two agreements that are slated for approval that kind of go hand in hand. One of them is a master license agreement, which is a non-exclusive agreement. Per the FCC regulations, we have to treat everybody the same in terms of the use of the public rights of way. And so that's more or less the agreement that covers how does a utility provider such as Intrepid come in and utilize those spaces and what terms and conditions. Some of the things that are in there include, if we need you to move your staff, what does that process look like? As you saw with the Bella Rosa project, sometimes having people move their utilities out of the way for our infrastructure takes time and energy. This kind of explains whose responsibility it is and what they're required to do and what timelines. Things of that nature is what's in that master license agreement. And then aside from that, we have kind of a memorandum of agreement, which kind of goes more to the partnership that we're looking to build with Intrepid and Allo. And some of those things that's specified in that agreement, to your point, Mayor, is that cooperative approach to communication. So we'll probably end up having some bit of a landing page on our website to make sure that people are getting directed to the places they can go to make sure they're getting answers to their questions and or getting their complaints or other concerns resolved, and some of that joint or combined media presence so that folks can get the information that they need throughout the community. In addition, some opportunities for partnership in terms of if there's a way to have the project move quicker and or stay away from congested areas, we can perhaps look at what property does the town own that might lend itself to the ability to have an easement off to the side to run a fiber line, which would not be covered in a right-of-way under the master license agreement, things of that nature to kind of minimize the impact to the community, minimize the potential impact to infrastructure, as some of those intersections might be very congested or otherwise, whatever that might look like. So that's the memorandum of understanding or of agreement. That's kind of the side piece.
That brought up two questions that I have. Sorry, I'm the question person. Hardware is owned by you, by Intrepid, yes? Okay. So if build out goes to plan and something goes wrong with a piece of hardware, we would communicate with you, a resident would communicate with you, however that needs to happen. But at the service itself, they would communicate with Allo, correct?
That is correct, yes.
Okay. Would and could our residents have a say in when you implement? So you communicate with them that you might have to drill of some sort or build, I'm not sure, and they say, you know what, that doesn't really work in our front yard today. Can you come back tomorrow? How does that work? Are you able to accommodate?
So the building that we'll do takes place in the public right-of-way, and
No residential front yards.
The initial credit cards?
Front yards.
Okay. No, not into residential front yards immediately. It'll be in the public right-of-way, just in the easement or wherever is best, sometimes under the sidewalk if that's where we have to bore. And again, all restoration will be done better or as good as before. When it does cross into the residential area will be during service installments, which are a separate process from the distribution and feeder fiber. And at that point, it is up to the resident to schedule when they get service. They can pick an appointment and get it as soon or as late as they would like.
Some of the additional communication might be useful, Madam Mayor, to, I think part of your point is in areas where there might be a public utility easement that's not necessarily right of way, that goes across what people perceive as their private property, which is their private property but has an easement through it. 'Cause some of these neighborhoods might have a utility easement that runs through their space, and not everybody understands that, you know, there's a legal right to be there, and perhaps additional, if those exist in Frederick, some additional communication to those residences. I don't know if there is or isn't. I'm not as versed in our GIS as others might be.
Well, I'm sure you can sympathize with my question in that we have neighboring communities that don't have a communication plan for that. And there are residents who are kind of having this happen to their front yard, not through your organization, but I just want to avoid that and make sure that we're being respectful and learning from, other municipalities' journey through this process, because the citizens don't like that.
Actually, I think I should clarify what I had said before. There may be extenuating circumstances where the way that the fiber is provided is not immediate. So when they request service, there may be a difference between how the fiber was put through their yard, depending on how that neighborhood looks. And I'll have to get back with my team to get you further details on that. I do want to make that clear.
I had a question. So service will not be available until the complete build is done in, I think you said approximately February 2026, or will that start when an area is completed?
As soon as an area is complete, it is available for service. We start with our backbone ring, which is how that connects each neighborhood to the greater service, which connects the OLT, which connects to the internet. So once that's completed, we can start building out neighborhoods. And then once that house has been passed, it is ready for service.
Okay. So some groups, some neighborhoods, some areas will be ahead of that 2026 deadline, but that's when the completion of the entire project is expected, give or take.
Correct.
Okay.
But would you initially go into areas where the business is like King Supers or whatever on the Colorado and 52 area where that's being constructed right now? Would you go into there and use those, build out that area first?
So kind of like what I said with wanting to know where roads are being worked on or where certain areas work better. We want to meet in the middle as far as that is concerned, because where we start sometimes is affected by existing backbone routes of how we can hook up to data centers. Like I believe this will hook up to the Denver data center, and wherever that larger line will come through this area is where we may have to start. However, we want to time the build so that certain areas that are already under construction are addressed before they're finished and we don't have to undo work. Or if certain areas are going to come under construction at one time of year, hopefully we can coincide that in the best way possible for both of us.
Having been through one of these buildings in a previous community, there isn't an opportunity for lobbying for your neighborhood to go first.
Or
Although-
is there a need for King Supers to have fiber? I'm not sure.
Right. Well, it's in a business community. You want to get in there before everything's built and you're beneath the pavement. But
Well, your answer made sense. It wasn't specifically about me, but I know that one of our big areas that we're trying to help is our downtown area. So if that's one of the earlier areas that can get hit, if that works within your plan, that was my thought. I will wait my turn, and when it happens, and that's all good.
right. I wasn't accused.
You can make me go last. I don't care. I'm okay.
Last house.
Last house.
What you'll
possible.
likely get in the process of all of this as the community becomes more aware of this project is you'll get a lot of people wanting to know when their neighborhood's going to be put online, and that's really hard to tell at this point at least.
Yeah.
But generally speaking, it's a lot less impactful to run in and put in conduit when things are under construction before the roads and everything else exist than it is to do it after the fact.
And as our vendors become involved with the lower level designs and we can get a little more granular with what parts of the city we can cover, we'll be working with you all, hopefully at each step of the way, to make sure that we're addressing as many of those points as we can.
Any other questions?
I don't.
No questions?
Nope. Good.
Well, thank you. It's nice to meet you both. We appreciate you.
Very much.
Yeah. Sierra, I noticed you moved a little closer to the room. Do you have anything you'd like to share?
I was just going to be here in case you guys had other questions, but Jason wasn't able to answer. So.
Okay. Any questions for the business community? No? Okay. All right. Some direction on item K would be helpful, please.
Madam Mayor, I move that we accept resolution number 64, granting a master license agreement for fiber network through Intrepid and Allo. If that's the correct wording, will that work?
Yeah, as presented, because we do
As
also want
presented.
to
I
do
meant
the
to
memorandum
say
of agreement
as
as well.
presented. Second.
The first thing you've said today. Motion and a second. Any further discussion? Nope.
Trustee DeValley,
Yes.
Trustee March,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Brown,
Yes.
Trustee Padilla,
Yes.
Trustee Mahan,
Yes.
Trustee Lamach.
Yes.
Motion passes 6-0.
Great. Thank you. Welcome to Frederick. Thank you.
Thank you, gentlemen.
All right, y'all. We have trustee reports. Anyone have any items tonight? No?
No.
Nope.
No?
Like running through the list of things.
Bye. Thank you. Nothing from anybody? Is this the actual executive session? Per the agenda, it's an executive session for negotiations. Are you comfortable with me citing which component of negotiations we're going into potentially executive session for?
Right, for this level of specificity regarding Silverstone Marketplace.
Okay, thank you. All right, so I would propose a recess, but prior to that, I would like to propose that upon returning, we go into executive session for the purpose of determining positions relative to matters that may be subject to negotiations, developing strategy for negotiations, and or instructing negotiators under CRS section 246402-4E1 regarding the Silverstone Marketplace.
So moved.
Second.
Motion and a second.
Trustee Mahan,
Yes.
Trustee March,
Yes.
Trustee Padilla,
Yes.
Trustee Lamach,
Yes.
Trustee DeValley,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Brown.
Yes.
Motion passes 6-0.
Wonderful, thank you. Let's take a 5-minute recess, not a minute longer.
What is the logic on how you read us?
I just randomly.
What is the law?